So hello and everyone, and welcome back to session 2 of Seceon's 2026 Cyber Battlefield, how unified XDR, ITDR, UEBA, and OT security stop the most dangerous threats. I'm Maggie McAlpine, Director of Cybersecurity Partnerships and Evangelism at Seceon, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Ed Moore, our VP of Cybersecurity Partnerships and Sales at Seceon. A little bit about Ed. Ed delivers AI-driven threat detection and automated response solutions and brings over 15 years of experience in enterprise cybersecurity sales. He has built sales organizations from the ground up, developed go-to-market strategies, and established channel programs for companies including Stamus Networks, RSA Security, Emerging Threats, now part of Proofpoint. His expertise spans SIM, XDR platforms, managed detection and response, threat intelligence, and cloud security. Ed is known for his consultative approach, translating complex security challenges into actionable solutions for enterprise clients, and has consistently driven quota achievement while pioneering new market opportunities across the Americas, with a strong focus on strategic partnerships and value-based selling. Before we begin, a quick note for everyone joining. Please feel free to submit questions in the Q&A at any point during the session. We'll collect them and address them towards the end. With that, let's get started. Ed, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks very much, Maggie. I appreciate the intro. Yeah. So I'm just going to share my entire screen here, and we're going to talk about three prominent, APT groups that are out there, including the Fin7, the Lazarus Group, and the Killen ransomware. And to do this, we're going to be using, in part, our Seceon's breach and attack simulation, which is used to help constantly, test your environment against real-world threats so that you can see where you stand on those. To start, I tried to put together a set of kind of an overview of the history of these different groups and how they, are, different areas of commonality, if you will. As it is, they have all evolved from kind of, point of sale or even just kind of more of a broad outreach to try to find people to victimize, to being a lot more selective in who it is that they're going after, large corporations and large entities, targeting critical infrastructure, and really even blurring geopolitical lines, and in that they are cooperating with one another in order to be able to perform their malicious activity. All of them are using advanced social engineering, and they are all very professional. These folks, from what I understand, a lot of these groups, they have healthcare plans. They meet in an office. They got to punch a clock. They get together in a conference room, just like any of us would, and talk about how they're going to go about approaching a specific target. And what their actions on objectives are when they go to approach those targets. And believe me, it is extremely sophisticated, the work that these folks are doing. Many of them have shared, technical playbooks, including, double and triple extortion. In other words, they aren't just going to, encrypt your environment and say, hey, if you want your data back, we're going to, you need to pay us money. They're also going to exfiltrate that data and threaten sharing the data. Some of them even have what they call journalists that, part of their job is to scrub through that data and start to release embarrassing information for that company to help try to influence them to pay their ransomware. It's very sophisticated. They're using exploitation of critical edge vulnerabilities and living off the land. Like using a Windows remote management solution, something that we've seen an awful lot, in the industry, where some sort of RMM solution is being used, as an attack vector by impersonating, a administrator through legitimate credentials and keys that they've stolen from a third party, right? So there's all kinds of different challenges that are associated with these folks. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how we can go about approaching them. Here is a more technical list for folks here in the audience that are, more of a security practitioner than myself. so that they can understand a lot of the different kind of technical things that they're doing, including mentions of specific MITRE techniques that we will also be able to demonstrate and use to illustrate how we go about uncovering this type of activity. And so the breach and attack simulation piece is providing continuous security posture validation. It's helping you to understand your environment, where you have gaps in your coverage, and how you can button up those gaps in your coverage. And it also helps to provide ongoing training and preparedness for your cybersecurity team, all of which are very valuable and in some cases are mandated by certain compliances that you have these ongoing kind of exercises, if you will. The first attack that we're going to talk about is the Fin7 cybersecurity group, or the Fin7 bad actor group. They started, like I mentioned earlier, with kind of point of sale attacks. Over time, they kind of shifted to businesses, and then they started with ransomware and extortion. And now they really have diversified themselves and have expanded into providing ransomware as a service. Typical dwell time for these folks is 5 to 7 days before they're actually able to move into their actions on objectives, which again can be the exfiltration of data, the encryption of your information, those kinds of things in order to be able to get a ransom from you. Some of the different ways to be able to help identify these folks is because they're trying to mimic legitimate administrative commands. They might use something like Windows subsystem for Linux, because that is going to fly under the radar of a lot of different detection mechanisms that are surrounding themselves around a Windows environment. So they're very, very clever in how they go about doing things. And so in order to be able to catch them, we need to be able to baseline activity within an infrastructure in order to be able to uncover those anomalous things that are good, strong indicators of compromise that are worth your time to investigate. So from here, let's go over to our demo environment. This is our dashboard of the breach and attack simulation within the Seceon Open Threat Management platform. Here you can see the top 10 tactics used in its ongoing testing, and the top 10 abilities used in the operations of these different threats. If we go over, from here, I can go into a kind of a way of being able to look at all the different types of threats that I can view, right? And be able to test against. I've already loaded one of them, which is for the Fin7. I wanted to be able to show everything that's available across the MITRE attack metrics, and do it in a way that you can understand just how complete this is. And this is all of the activity that is associated with Fin7. I can zoom back in over here, and then I can go to say, I just want to look at all of the relevant activity to Fin7. Here I can see where we've blocked activity, where we've seen something that's been executed, and be able to have a nice little overview of what's going on with this specific kind of attack simulation. What's really nice is that I can go over here and go into what we call our deep tracker. And in deep tracker, I simply typed in display activity associated with Fin7, right? That easy, right? And it doesn't have to be technical. It's very straightforward. And then after our AI goes through and finds all of that associated information, I can ask AI to give me a summary of that specific threat. So in here, I can see where it has gone through to kind of give me a nice overview. It gives me a nice kind of source destination distribution, destination IP targeting, and the threat intelligence and context behind it as well. So in looking at this event, it talks an awful lot about how this specific IP address is showing the highest activity that would be associated or potentially associated with Fin7. And that is this particular IP address here, the 192.168.9.48. When I go and look at the individual events, right, I can simply filter by that specific IP address. We can already see it right here. But this gives me a nice way of being able to filter by a specific IP address over here on the side. And then I can just click that IP address. And now everything that I look at in this specific kind of details field or this detailed list, right, is going to would be just that specific IP address. In typical demo fashion, we're having a little bit of a delay getting this to come up with all the different IPs so that I could say I want to filter by the one. But it is a nice function to be able to kind of narrow down your search and what it is that you're looking at when you're going through an investigation. All of the details that I want that are associated with this IP address are right here in a detailed view where I can go through and I can see the JSON view, and I can also see a table view of this specific information, right? So very strong. All the details that you need are there. I can dynamically drill down into each and every one of these pieces of activity in order to be able to best understand, what the threat actor is doing that is aligning with the Fin7 threat. So from here, I'm going to move back over to our presentation, and we'll talk about our next threat. So the next threat is with the Lazarus Group. They are huge, right? And this one here calls out the Rowan Bridge heist. If you are not familiar with that, this was an attack on Web3 infrastructure. This is the infrastructure that is used for digital currencies and the like. So it's decentralized in its management, which is one of the ways that it can be, more vulnerable, perhaps. But this was a huge wake-up call for the digital currency, the Bitcoin, market, where they were steadily just kind of funneling money out of this organization through what they called a Rowan Bridge, and utilizing a multitude of digital currency facilities in order to do this. And the attack methods that they have are going out and soliciting people for work, acting as if they are an actual potential employer. They're grabbing authorization and tokens abuse. They're using smart contract manipulation. These are contracts that are smart contracts embedded inside their infrastructure that are used to dictate how money can flow and where it should go. And if they're able to manipulate those contracts, that's one way of them being able to exfiltrate this money. In this case, it was well over $600 million worth of stuff. And in order to be able to detect this, we need to look at the use of legitimate administrative tools, like PowerShell and the like. They often will wipe their logs to kind of, mask their presence and to help, delay detection. And the actors are also using slow and low reconnaissance phase. So they might be in your infrastructure for months. It's not uncommon for a bad actor to be doing some sort of reconnaissance over a 4, 5, 6, 7 month time period, even longer, before they move forward into action and objectives and actually take action. So from here, I can go back to our handy dashboard. Over here, I've already got this view where I'm looking at the actual pieces within the MITRE framework that pertain to this specific threat for the Lazarus Group. And again, I can see where I'm doing well, where I've seen different tactics being executed, and where we have blocked that activity. If I go into a deeper dive, I'm going to use the deep tracker again. And here, I just, again, used our deep tracker to just type in display any activity that's associated with the Lazarus Group. When I look at the AI summary in here, they actually even call out some of the specific MITRE tactics here. This is the T1110. Maybe I want to know a little bit more about T1110. There's a couple of different areas that I can do that. I can look at kind of a real-time, status of alerts. And this is a demo environment. Trust me, you are not going to have anything that's this lit up in an active deployment. But this gives you an idea of the kind of threats that we're looking to demonstrate. But I want to be a lot more specific than that, right? So I have this specific threat, the T1110, that is associated with Lazarus here. And so I can go into Deep Tracker. This is another facility where I can say, I want to be able to actually load a specific MITRE technique ID. And here it is. So here's T1110. And then I execute that, and then this is going to show me all of the activity that is associated with T1110. And then I can, again, just be able to review the type of activity that I'm seeing. Notice that a lot of what it is capturing here is from network, and we're going to talk kind of towards the end of this presentation about monitoring flow data and the advantages of monitoring flow data. This is what we consider to be the ground truth within cybersecurity, and it's a primary mechanism for tracking behaviors, not just behaviors of people, but also behaviors of databases or containers or applications, SaaS applications, right? The application here is really quite far and wide and extremely impactful. But again, all of these details are available to me. I can very quickly go in and just say, show me more information about this, where I can drill down and get a good, clear understanding of exactly what's happening with each individual event. Or again, I can leverage AI to tell me, about it and how I might go about resolving it. So from here, we're going to move on to the next threat, and that is the kill-in ransomware. And this is an organization that does have very strong technical capabilities to evade detection. Their advanced evasion includes things like a language. Well, this is interesting. Features a language kill switch. So some of the Russian groups and some of the bad actors actually are, kind of colluding with the Russians. And so if you have the Russian language loaded on your keyboard, it's going to see that Russian language is on your keyboard and not execute, because they don't want to mess with you if you are, somehow affiliated with Russia. Again, the level of sophistication, even just to prevent them from attacking someone that they don't want to, right, is also present. And looking at detecting it, there are a lot of different ways of doing it. Looking at identity threat detection and response, being able to view activity from identity and access management and privileged access management solutions, and your cloud-based identity management as well. We're able to correlate all of these things together, understand who that one person is that has identities that will traverse, your entire hybrid infrastructure, whether that's them logging into a SaaS application, them logging into just a general cloud environment as an administrator, or all of the activities that they're doing through Active Directory within your on-prem. This is another really phenomenal strength of the solution itself. And then there's lateral movement and tool abuse. Again, lateral movement is something where we're going to rely on NetFlow to be able to show us that, or flow data, in order to be able to uncover that type of activity. And as well with RMM tools. Again, these bad actors, sometimes they're able to get the tokens that they need, the keys that they need to take over the use of an RMM tool, a remote management tool, in order to mask themselves as an administrator and get into an environment. I believe it was the U.S. Department of Treasury that was the attack vector that they used. And then here we see again under WSL execution, again, where they are using the Windows subsystem for Linux to be able to mask their activity inside a Windows environment through this Linux instance that isn't being as carefully monitored. Um, and so there's a lot of different stuff that they're doing here, and these are all opportunities for detection. When we go in and we look at Killen, I can go here to where we can see all of the different activities in being tested within Killen. And this is where I need to kind of have a little bit of an admission in that I'm using two different demo environments. This demo environment doesn't have as much data as this environment in here, where I'm looking at Killen, where I ask the system, again, just display any information that's associated with Killen. Now, there is a couple of IP addresses here that came up that has, some low level kind of indicators that might be associated with Killen. But the good news is that we really don't have any Killen activity in the infrastructure. But it does kind of give me some good information about Killen in general that I can use, for, you know, um, general knowledge and whatnot. If I want to be able to look deeper into these types of attacks. And once again, all of this stuff is here within, at your fingertips. And not only can you look at the JSON view or table view of the technical data, but I can also have Seceon's AI build some conclusions and tell you what's happening surrounding this specific event that was highlighted in accordance with this specific query. Okay. And there's all kinds of additional functionality within the Seceon solution. Understand that not only do I have this kind of functionality within MITRE, but I can also invoke different playbooks from within our playbook manager, where it's really easy for me to see exactly how I am going to go about responding to a threat. So if I just bring up any single one of these different things, it'll give you an idea of how easy it is to set up these playbooks. It's literally just drag and drop functionality where I can have things going on in parallel, and I just draw lines in order to be able to connect different pieces of activity. So very easy to be able to set up these automated responses. And in some cases, what I might want to do is actually have auto remediation. And here are a couple of examples of the different types of automated remediation that you can also invoke with the solution itself. We also talked a lot about behaviors. And so behavior analytics is a huge piece of what we do. I can look at it again from an overview perspective of user and entity behavioral analytics. And then I can also be able to look at specific user analytics as well here. Or I can even look at host behavior analytics. This is your databases, your containers, and other pieces of your infrastructure and how they're behaving. Again, just keeping a finger on the pulse of everything that's going on within your environment. Another thing that's very strong within the solution itself that I also feel can be a lot of help in being more proactive is what we call our cybersecurity. Um, Hang on a second here. IT Security Scorecard 360, which is here. I'm going to go to my dashboards and here we go, security scorecard. And this is where I can manage, it's kind of like an additional layer beyond the breach and attack simulation, where I can keep an eye on my overall security posture and all of the different components that build up that overall security score, even monitoring dark web activity, where I can see different users that have credentials that are in the dark web. So I can ping those folks, have them change their credentials, and make sure that they aren't vulnerable to having some sort of a takeover of their credentials online. So there are a lot of different capabilities here that really help you to be proactive with your defense, and even an executive dashboard that's very interactive, where I can drill down into specific types of activity here that I can see, new alerts that pop up and being able to respond to those alerts, or drill down into them, or just look at the overall activity within my environment itself, and how that data is flowing through my infrastructure. So very, very powerful stuff. So from here, I thought we'd just kind of do a quick review of the breach and attack simulation. Obviously, this is a very high level kind of look at the type of information that you can get from breach and attack simulation. Suffice it to say, it is providing continuous security validation, realistic threat simulation, threat vector simulation, as well as being able to uncover insights that are driven by AI, as well as helping with compliance readiness. That's another thing that I didn't have time to dive into here today, but is also very useful. We even have a compliance dashboard so that if you want to adhere to any specific compliance, but you also want to be able to adhere to one or more security standards like ISO 27001 or NIST, you can monitor your alignment with those specific standards all within a single dashboard. And all of this is seamlessly integrated between what we call our AI SIM and our AI XDR platforms. Super easy to deploy. You simply deploy the breach and attack simulation agent on an endpoint. Understand that that endpoint is going to be selecting APTs, or you select the APTs that you want to be able to run. And then it will actually go out from that one endpoint and test the security mechanisms or the security posture of everything that's visible for it. So if you have highly segmented pieces, then you can deploy these different agents on endpoints within each segment, and even be able to test going, from one segment to another to see how effective your zero trust infrastructure or your micro segmentation is within your infrastructure. And it's also helping to test the efficiency of your tools. And there are more enhancements coming. Right now, we're only supporting Windows, but Linux is just around the corner. And then being able to simulate multiple techniques and APTs in a single run. So I could say, I want to test all 10 of these and let me know when you're done, because it does take some time. When we talk about defending against APTs, you really need a defense in depth strategy. Large enterprises are constantly chasing this with very complex information security stacks, with all these different pieces of point solutions. And these different point solutions, they integrate, through API calls, but they all have a different database structure. They all have different data schemas. And getting, all of these different tools to make sense of one another is something in and of itself. And oftentimes, solutions will also have their own individual AI engines used for detection, which sounds good, but unfortunately, we're losing a lot of detail from that point solution. Let's take network detection and response, for example. Many of the players in that space are hanging their hat on artificial intelligence. And that artificial intelligence isn't giving a lot of detail to help correlate that activity that it sees on the network with what is being seen on the endpoint by a different vendor, or what's being seen in the vulnerabilities that have been uncovered within your infrastructure. Here you can see some of the solutions within the Seceon platform that are all integrated into one piece. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, right, we have very tight integration with a multitude of identity and access management and privileged access management tools in order to deliver very real identity threat detection and response. And this is just one example of how you can leverage the 800 plus integrations that are within the platform. So to kind of talk about how we differentiate ourselves, I want to be able to illustrate how the company began. You look at a Palo Alto or a Fortinet, and these companies began as firewall companies. They made a lot of money, and so they started to acquire other organizations. And now both of them say that they have a cybersecurity platform. And the reality is that that platform is really just a set of tools that have been cobbled together by them, just like enterprises have been doing since the beginning, since the beginning of IT infrastructure. Um, Seceon is very different in that the founders of the company knew from the beginning that they wanted to develop an all-in-one cybersecurity platform because they saw firsthand the um, the problem that exists with having all of these cobbled together pieces, APIs, and trying to normalize data, and it's never right where it needs to be. And in that effort, because they knew they wanted to have a cybersecurity platform from the start, they knew that they needed to start the development of that platform with machine learning, deep learning, and dynamic threat models that are specific to cybersecurity. That's where they started. That's what's at the core of the Seceon Open Threat Management platform. Then, once they had that core, they were able to build a whole set of tools around it so that everything is passing through their dynamic threat models. They have the same common AI engine that is analyzing everything from your network traffic to your endpoint activity to the applications that are running and how they're behaving and where they're communicating, all of those things going through that one single core, providing the most cohesive kind of singular view of everything that's happening within your infrastructure. So you have network, user, and entity behavior and analytics and anomaly detection, constant compliance monitoring, and constant exposure management, all helping to drive automated detection and containment. The other thing I want to point out here is the deep learning piece. I don't see very many vendors talking about deep learning. They talk an awful lot about machine learning. Understand that machine learning is for highly structured data, right? So it's somewhat limited with what you can do with that machine learning capability. Deep learning leverages unstructured data, giving the Seceon solution far more detection capabilities across a greater variety of sources. Again, just one of the strengths and differentiators within the solution itself. And so we're driving the ability to be able to ingest. We literally have a client that is ingesting well over 200 petabytes of data a day, right? And so the ability to be able to scale is something that is a huge differentiator for us. And again, we can scale across your on-prem, your cloud, your SaaS, databases and containers, all those kinds of things. And bringing in the machine learning, the deep learning, and doing its analysis. Again, everything flowing through that single core. And that the dynamic threat models that were developed specifically for cybersecurity and is constantly being updated with all of the activity that we're seeing in the World Wide Web. And the idea being is that we want to help increase the efficiency and efficacy of your security teams. We want to help your security teams better align themselves to the business. They will have more time to focus on mission critical activities for your business because they're not going to be wasting their days chasing down false positives, and they're not going to have to be doing any of that mundane kind of triage type stuff that is going to allow them to be more focused on business critical type applications. Earlier, I mentioned flow data and how important flow data is. Many of our competitors are pricing their solution based on the amount of data that is being collected or that their solutions are analyzing. The Seceon platform uses an asset-based pricing structure, which means you can leverage the enormous amount of information, the enormous amount of data that comes from flows between devices, communications between devices, in order to be able to uncover threats. This is something that's missed an awful lot. I would argue that the majority of the RMM type attack vectors could have been avoided. Those breaches could have been avoided if they were more focused on the network and looking at what's communicating with what from where, and whether or not that's abnormal or normal type activity. And so here you can kind of see what research has shown from the likes of SolarWinds and MITRE and others in looking at the importance of it. And then what APTs look like in flow data from being able to identify initial access. Again, we want to be able to identify them as early in the cybersecurity kill chain as possible. Being able to look at establishing a foothold, whether or not they're using that slow and low kind of technique that was mentioned. One of the threat actors uses, where they're doing constant reconnaissance and things like that. And flow data is a great way to be able to uncover that type of activity, and being able to look at privileged access escalations and lateral movement within an infrastructure, as well as data staging and exfiltration. Again, all of these different things are really going to stand out when you are keeping an eye on what's communicating with what within your infrastructure. Flow data. So flow data is helping to provide visibility even with encrypted traffic, right? So we still know what's talking to what, and there's a lot of very valuable information in the header of within flow data that is very advantageous, that our AI and machine learning and deep learning can take advantage of to help ensure that there isn't malicious activity going on. Lateral movement, C2 or command and control type detection mechanisms, where we're looking at where some sort of malware might be reaching out for more instructions about what to do next within your infrastructure based on the reconnaissance that it's found. And then very low overhead, high coverage telemetry, which again is made possible through Seceon's asset-based pricing. So most SIEM and XDR vendors rely heavily on logs, and logs can be disabled, they can be tampered with, they can be incomplete, and they can also be very noisy to try to sift through. And sometimes you need pretty verbose logging in order to be able to uncover some of these APTs that we talked about today. And again, this is not a concern with the Seceon solution, because we aren't charging you by the amount of data that we are ingesting. You need verbose logging on certain critical pieces of your infrastructure, turn it on and we'll soak it in. Again, hundreds of petabytes a day is something that we've proven an ability to be able to handle. Flow data can't be faked, and it provides real-time visibility with behavior detection, lateral movement, and even analyzing what's going on through encrypted traffic itself. So APTs aren't going away, and in order to protect yourself, you need a variety of different tools, and all those tools need to work in concert with one another. And this is why we're seeing a lot of people moving toward all-in-one cybersecurity solutions. This is why we're seeing organizations that are embracing this kind of thing, because they are seeing a huge reduction in their overall IT cybersecurity spend. So their licenses are being consolidated. They're reducing complexity. This reduced complexity makes for more effective detection, and it also provides for better teamwork within your organization across compliance and detection and response and analysts, and even by monitoring even development environments and the like. If you see what if you like what you see, you want to be able to do a deeper dive, we would be happy to talk with you about what your specific needs and challenges are, specific questions that probably popped up as I went through this very high level demonstration of the solution itself. And you can just shoot us an email and we'll get you to the appropriate account manager to help talk with you about your specific needs. You can, if you want to just skip to a demonstration, here's a good link to be able to do that. And of course, if you want to be able to run a free trial of our CGuard platform, CGuard is our software as a service offering, so that runs within the Seceon infrastructure. Understand that you are not limited to that. If you need to deploy something on-prem or in your own instance of any given cloud or public cloud environment, we can do that too. CGuard is just super easy to deploy. You plop in your domain, you put in your admin credentials, and before you know it, data is just flowing in right away. And I guarantee you, you're going to see a few things that you didn't expect. So that's where I end. Hopefully, I didn't go too fast. I'm sure that there are some questions out there, so I will leave it to you to ask any questions that you may have going forward.
Thanks so much, Ed. Walking us through all of that. We really appreciate you sharing your perspective. And we did get one question out of band from one of our partners. So, how are other MSPs thinking about packaging and pricing this kind of advanced detection for financial clients without overcomplicating their service catalog?
I guess the thing that I would look at would just be the different product offerings that we have, right? So they are structured in a nice way that I think helps an MSSP to be able to upsell over time, right? So everything that we do begins with either AI SIM or the AI SIM CGuard. This is the required piece. If you want to use our endpoint detection and response solution with our endpoint protection platform, single agent, by the way, for that dual functionality for more efficiency, you can add that piece, right? So that's kind of an upsell, right? The other thing that is nice about it is that you can use your own endpoint detection and response solution if you prefer. But each one of these things are different ways that you can upsell to your clients and build value over time. You may uncover needs where they have very strict compliance needs. We've had organizations that have reduced their overall prep time by over 60% for their compliance reporting. Or if maybe it's a manufacturer and you just kind of got your foot in the door with some baseline security type capabilities, which are still very strong, right? But at the same time, you might be able to upsell into monitoring their operating technology. Looking at how their ATMs and that kind of thing are behaving within their infrastructure. So I think that that's kind of the quick answer. Hopefully that makes sense. If you want to ask some follow-on questions, happy to answer them. But this is, I think, one of the big advantages of Seceon is that it's very inexpensive to get them initially up and running. And then over time, you can upsell them into some of the other solution areas within the platform.
Thank you so much for that, Ed. We also got asked where our handbook is. I believe we're going to answer that one out directly by text. It should be on our website, Joe, but we'll make sure to get it to you by email, if nothing else, directly. So, if anyone else has any more questions, please put them in the Q&A. If we don't get to you here live, we'll definitely try to make sure to get them to you, by email or through LinkedIn, however we can get in contact with you. But with that, I did want to say thank you, Ed, for staying with us through the Q&A and for answering that question. And thanks to everyone who submitted that. Thanks to the person who submitted that question and who joined the discussions today. So that does, I think, bring an end to session 2 of our 2026 Cyber Battlefield series. And thank you again for your time.